The pregnancy test clattered to the bathroom floor as Natalie's knees buckled. I caught her before she fell, my arms wrapping around her trembling frame as she sobbed into my chest. "It's impossible," she whispered between gasps. "The doctors said, after the vasectomy." I held her tighter, my face buried in her hair so she couldn't see my expression, because while she was crying tears of shock and confusion, I was calculating. The vasectomy had been 18 months ago. The procedure had been successful. I'd had the follow-up tests to prove it, which meant the child growing inside my wife wasn't mine. My name is Mark Reynolds, and I've built my entire life on logic and preparation. As a senior financial strategist at Meridian Holdings, I spend my days analyzing risk, predicting market fluctuations, and helping clients navigate uncertainty. Numbers don't lie, patterns don't deceive, unlike people. Natalie and I had been married for 8 years when we decided to try for children. She was a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm, vibrant and outgoing where I was reserved and methodical. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. She brought spontaneity to my structured world, while I provided the stability she craved. The first miscarriage hit us hard. The second one nearly destroyed us both. After months of grief counseling and medical consultations, we made the difficult decision together. No more attempts. The emotional toll was too devastating, and the doctors had warned us about the increasing risks. I scheduled the vasectomy, and Natalie held my hand through the entire process. "We'll focus on us," she had said, stroking my hair as I recovered. "We have each other. That's enough." For 18 months, we rebuilt our relationship. We traveled, renovated our home, and rediscovered the intimacy that grief had stolen from us. Natalie seemed happier than she'd been in years. Her work performance improved dramatically. She was even being considered for a promotion by her new boss, Thomas Carter. I should have seen the signs then. The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in fitness classes, the way she started dressing differently, more provocatively. But I trusted her completely. After everything we'd been through together, the idea that she could betray me seemed as impossible as her pregnancy. That trust made standing in our bathroom, holding a positive pregnancy test, feel like stepping into an alternate reality where the laws of biology no longer applied. The subtle changes had started 6 months earlier, though I didn't recognize them as warning signs at the time. Natalie began working later, claiming her new boss Thomas was preparing for a major client presentation that required extended hours. She'd come home energized rather than exhausted, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen since our early dating days. "Thomas really appreciates my input," she'd say over dinner, mentioning his name with increasing frequency. "He says I have natural leadership potential." The gym membership came next. Natalie had never shown interest in fitness before, but suddenly she was attending evening yoga classes and weekend spinning sessions. Her body began changing, toning, becoming more confident in ways that should have made me happy, but instead felt foreign. She bought new workout clothes, expensive pieces that seemed designed more for appearance than function. Then there were the phone calls, hushed conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Text messages that made her smile in ways my own messages never seemed to. When I'd ask about them, she'd wave dismissively. "Just work stuff. You know how crazy things get with the Johnson account." But the Johnson account had been completed months ago. The most painful betrayal was the gradual withdrawal of intimacy. Our physical relationship, which had been slowly healing after our losses, began cooling again. Natalie would turn away in bed, claiming exhaustion or headaches. When we did make love, she seemed distant, as if her mind was elsewhere entirely. "I'm just stressed about work," she'd explain, but her body language suggested something different. She was saving her passion for someone else. The final warning sign came 3 weeks before the pregnancy announcement. I had surprised her with dinner reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first date, hoping to reconnect. She spent the entire evening checking her phone, barely engaging in conversation. "You seem a million miles away," I finally said. She looked up, and for just a moment, I saw something in her eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. But it passed quickly, replaced by that bright smile I was beginning to recognize as performative. "Sorry, honey. You know how I get when I'm overwhelmed." But she wasn't overwhelmed. She was in love, just not with me. The moment of absolute clarity came not during the pregnancy announcement, but 3 days later, when Natalie began planning our miracle baby's future with an enthusiasm that felt rehearsed. She sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by pregnancy books and baby name lists, talking about nursery themes and college funds with the kind of detailed preparation that suggested she'd been thinking about this for months. "I know we said we were done trying," she said, not meeting my eyes, "but maybe this is the universe telling us we were meant to be parents." I watched her perform this pantomime of surprised joy while doing mental calculations. The timeline didn't work. Even if the vasectomy had somehow failed, which my annual follow-up tests confirmed it hadn't, the dates were wrong. We hadn't been intimate during her likely conception window because she'd been too tired from her increased work schedule. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in my home office staring at my laptop screen. I could confront her directly, demand the truth, and watch our marriage explode in a mess of accusations and denials. Or I could do what I did best: gather information, analyze the situation, and formulate a strategic response. I thought about our 8 years together, the vacations we'd shared, the dreams we'd built, the grief we'd navigated as a team. I thought about the way she used to look at me in the early days, like I was her anchor in an uncertain world. I thought about the vows we'd exchanged, the promises we'd made. Then I thought about her bright, false smile as she announced her impossible pregnancy. The way she'd been saving her passion for another man while I'd been faithfully rebuilding our relationship. The calculated cruelty of letting me believe I was going to be a father when she knew I could never be the biological parent. That's when I understood that confrontation would accomplish nothing. She was already gone, lost to whatever fantasy she'd constructed with her lover. But I wasn't going to be the fool in their story. If Natalie wanted to play games with my life, she'd discover that I was better at strategy than she'd ever imagined. I opened a new browser window and typed, "Best private investigator in the state." The war had begun, and she didn't even know it. Marcus Webb looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Weathered face, tired eyes, and the kind of careful speech that suggested he'd seen enough human ugliness to last several lifetimes. His office was a study in functional minimalism: metal filing cabinets, a desk scarred by years of coffee cups, and walls bare except for his licensing certificates. "Cheating spouse?" he asked after I'd explained my situation. "Among other things. I need comprehensive documentation. Photos, communications, financial records, witness statements, everything that would hold up in court." Webb nodded approvingly. "You're thinking like a lawyer. Smart. Most people want to catch them in the act and then make emotional decisions. You want evidence for a strategy." "Exactly. And I want to know everything about the other man. His family, his job, his vulnerabilities." "That'll cost extra." "Money isn't an issue." Over the next 4 months, Webb's reports arrived weekly, each one a small masterpiece of surveillance and investigation. The story they told was both predictable and infuriating. Thomas Carter, 42, senior manager at Natalie's firm. Married to Evelyn Carter for 15 years. Father to twin daughters aged 12. Active member of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, where he served on the Family Values Committee. Coached his daughter's soccer team on weekends. From the outside, the perfect suburban father and husband. The reality was different. Hotel receipts showed he'd been paying for rooms twice weekly for 6 months. Phone records revealed hundreds of texts and calls to Natalie during work hours and evenings. Credit card statements showed expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, and even a weekend trip to a spa resort while he'd told his wife he was at a business conference. Webb's surveillance photos were particularly damaging. Thomas and Natalie entering hotels together, kissing in his car in the parking garage of their office building, shopping together for maternity clothes, him with his hand possessively on her growing belly. But the most valuable intelligence was about Evelyn Carter. Webb's background check revealed a woman with an MBA from Wharton, a successful career in corporate law, and a reputation for strategic thinking that rivaled my own. She'd given up her partnership track to raise her daughters, but she still did consulting work and maintained her professional networks. "She's not going to collapse and forgive him," Webb noted during one of our meetings. "This is a woman who'll want blood." That's when I knew I'd found my ally. My plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than simply exposing the affair, I would orchestrate a coordinated destruction that would eliminate both the cheating spouses and leave their victims, Evelyn and myself, in control of the aftermath. But first, I needed to make contact with Evelyn Carter. I drafted a single email. "Mrs. Carter, we need to talk. I have proof your husband is having an affair with my wife. The situation is more complicated than you might expect. If you're interested in justice rather than just truth, please respond." I sent it on a Tuesday evening and had her reply within an hour. "I'll meet you tomorrow. Name the place." Evelyn Carter was nothing like Natalie. Where my wife was all curves and performance, Evelyn was angles and substance. She walked into the coffee shop like she owned it, identified me immediately, and sat down across from me with the kind of direct eye contact that suggested she was already 3 moves ahead in whatever game we were about to play. "Show me the proof," she said without preamble. I slid Webb's comprehensive file across the table. She opened it methodically, examining each photograph, reading selected text messages, scanning financial records. Her expression never changed. No tears, no gasps of shock, just the focused attention of someone processing information for strategic advantage. "How long have you known?" she asked when she finished. 4 months of investigation. I suspected longer. "And the pregnancy?" "Not mine. I had a vasectomy 18 months ago." She nodded as if this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "He's been different lately. More attentive, actually. Guilty conscience compensation. I should have realized." "What do you want to do about it?" Evelyn smiled, and I understood immediately why she'd been successful in corporate law. It wasn't a warm expression. It was the smile of someone who'd just realized she held all the cards. "I want to destroy them both, completely, publicly, in a way that ensures they never recover. Then we're going to work very well together." Over the next 6 months, Evelyn and I became partners in systematic revenge. We met weekly, sometimes at coffee shops, sometimes at my office after hours, always careful to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Our collaboration was purely strategic. 2 victims planning to become victors. Evelyn's legal background proved invaluable. She knew how to document everything for maximum courtroom impact, how to structure financial arrangements to protect our interests, and how to anticipate our spouses' likely responses to various scenarios. "Thomas will try to deny everything initially," she predicted during one of our planning sessions. "He'll claim the photos are misleading, that your wife seduced him, that it was just an emotional connection that got out of hand. Men like him always paint themselves as victims of feminine manipulation." "And Natalie will try to make it about our marriage problems," I added. "She'll say I was distant after the miscarriages, that I wasn't meeting her emotional needs, that she found comfort elsewhere." So we make sure their narratives don't matter. We create a revelation so public and so thoroughly documented that denial becomes impossible. The baptism was Natalie's idea, which made it perfect for our purposes. She wanted a celebration, something that would cement her miracle pregnancy story in front of family and friends. She spent weeks planning every detail, the catered dinner, the floral arrangements, the photographer, and especially the digital slideshow of the baby's first months. "I want everyone to see how blessed we are," she said, her hand resting on her growing belly. What she didn't know was that I was also planning every detail. While she chose flowers and menu options, I was arranging for professional audio-visual equipment, timing the revelation for maximum impact, and coordinating with Evelyn for our joint unveiling. The morning of the baptism, I made my final preparations. The DNA test results were already back, 0.00% paternity match, exactly as expected. The slideshow was loaded with additional content Natalie hadn't approved. Evelyn had her divorce papers ready and had already begun transferring assets to accounts Thomas couldn't access. As guests began arriving and Natalie fluttered around ensuring everything was perfect, I felt a strange sense of calm. After months of investigation and planning, the end was finally approaching. "You seem relaxed," Natalie commented as she adjusted my tie. "I thought you'd be more nervous about the presentation." "I'm looking forward to it," I replied honestly. "I think people are going to be very surprised by what we have to show them." She smiled and kissed my cheek, completely unaware that she was kissing the architect of her own destruction. The slideshow began exactly as Natalie had planned. Soft piano music accompanied photos of the baby's first moments, her tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb, the proud family portrait at the hospital, the carefully staged shots of domestic bliss that would soon be revealed as elaborate fiction. The guests smiled and murmured appreciatively. Natalie squeezed my hand, basking in the attention and admiration. Thomas sat 3 tables away with Evelyn and their daughters, playing the role of supportive colleague attending his employee's family celebration. Then the music stopped. The screen went black for just a moment before the first text message appeared in large, clear font. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again tonight. Mark is still completely clueless about us." The murmur of conversation died instantly. Someone dropped a glass. I felt Natalie's hand tighten convulsively around mine as more messages filled the screen. "The baby kicked today. Our little secret is getting stronger. I love how you touch my belly when we're alone. You're going to be such a good daddy. Mark signed up for LeMay's classes. It's almost funny how excited he is about your baby." The photographs came next. Thomas and Natalie kissing in a hotel hallway, his hand on her pregnant belly in a restaurant booth. The two of them shopping for baby clothes together, her trying on maternity dresses while he watched approvingly. Then came the audio recordings Webb had captured through electronic surveillance. Natalie's voice, clear and cruel. "He actually thinks it's his miracle baby. You should see how he talks about our child. It's pathetic, really." Thomas laughing. "What's he going to do when the kid looks nothing like him? By then it won't matter. I'll have established paternity, and he'll be legally responsible regardless. The perfect plan." The crowd was frozen in horrified fascination. Some guests were staring at the screen, others looking between Natalie and Thomas, trying to process what they were witnessing. The baby began crying, as if sensing the tension in the room. The final slide was the DNA test results, displayed in clinical black and white. Paternity test results. Alleged father, Mark Reynolds. Child, baby Carter. Reynolds. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. That's when Evelyn stood up. She'd been waiting for this moment, and her timing was perfect. She walked across the room with deliberate calm, stopping at Thomas's table where she dropped a thick folder in front of him. "Divorce papers," she announced clearly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm taking the house, the cars, your retirement account, and full custody of our daughters. The girls won't be seeing you again until you can prove you're not a danger to their moral development." Thomas tried to stand, his face flushing red, but Evelyn wasn't finished. "I've also informed your employer about your violation of the company's fraternization policy and your abuse of managerial authority. Your termination should be effective by Monday." Only then did I speak, my voice carrying clearly in the silent room. "Natalie, you didn't just have an affair. You orchestrated an elaborate fraud designed to make me financially and emotionally responsible for another man's child. You manipulated my love for you and my desire to be a father into a weapon against me." She was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks, but I felt no pity. Every penny I spent on prenatal care, every dollar set aside for the baby's college fund, every moment I spent dreaming about our family, it was all built on your lie. But lies have consequences. I stood up and looked around the room at the faces of family and friends who now understood exactly what kind of person they'd been celebrating. "The show's over," I announced. "Please feel free to take some cake home. It's too expensive to waste." Then I walked out, leaving Natalie sobbing at the head table with our confused baby and a room full of witnesses to her complete humiliation. The destruction that followed was both swift and comprehensive. Thomas was terminated from his position within 48 hours, the company citing moral turpitude and violation of workplace conduct policies. The HR documentation I'd anonymously provided, including evidence of his use of company resources for personal liaisons, made his dismissal legally bulletproof. Evelyn's divorce proceedings moved with ruthless efficiency. Her legal connections and Thomas's obvious guilt in adultery gave her enormous leverage in asset division. She secured the family home, both vehicles, Thomas's retirement accounts, and an alimony arrangement that would keep him financially strangled for years. The custody arrangement was particularly brutal, supervised visitation only, contingent on his completion of anger management and parenting classes. My own legal strategy was more complex, but equally devastating. I filed suit against Natalie for paternity fraud, demanding reimbursement for all pregnancy-related expenses, lost wages from time off work, and emotional damages. The case was virtually impossible to defend given the DNA evidence and documentation of her deliberate deception, but the social destruction was perhaps more satisfying than the legal victories. The baptism had been attended by both our families, our professional colleagues, and our social circle. Within days, everyone we knew had heard the story. Natalie became a pariah at her own workplace, the woman who'd tried to trick her husband into raising her boss's baby. The video from the baptism, captured by the professional photographer Natalie had insisted on hiring, somehow found its way onto social media. Within a week, it had gone viral with hashtags like #vasectomy miracle and #baptism from hell. Natalie's face became synonymous with elaborate betrayal, spawning memes and comment threads that dissected every aspect of her deception. Her parents, traditional Catholics who had always prided themselves on family values, publicly disowned her. Her father released a statement to the local newspaper expressing his profound shame and disappointment in his daughter's actions. Her mother changed her phone number and moved to another state rather than face the social stigma of association. Thomas and Natalie, thrown together by the wreckage of their respective marriages, attempted to build a life from the ashes of their destruction. They moved into a cramped apartment in a different part of town, both unemployed and unemployable within their former professional circles. The relationship that had seemed so passionate in secret proved unable to withstand the pressure of reality. Without the excitement of forbidden romance, and with the added stress of financial hardship and social isolation, they began turning on each other. Police were called to their apartment multiple times for domestic disturbances. Child Protective Services opened an investigation after neighbors reported the baby crying for hours without attention. Thomas eventually abandoned both Natalie and the child, claiming she had ruined his life and destroyed his relationship with his daughters. He moved across the country, leaving no forwarding address and no support for the woman he'd claimed to love. Natalie was left completely alone, no husband, no lover, no family support, no professional prospects, and no financial resources. She eventually found work at a discount beauty supply store in a strip mall, earning minimum wage while trying to care for a child whose very existence reminded everyone of her elaborate betrayal. I moved to Seattle 6 months after the baptism, accepting a position with a prestigious investment firm that had been courting me for years. The change of scenery felt appropriate, a clean start in a city where no one knew my history or my humiliation. My new life was simpler, more honest. I focused on work, traveled when I wanted to, and rediscovered interests I'd abandoned during my marriage. I took up sailing, joined a hiking club, and even began playing chess competitively again. For the first time in years, I felt like myself rather than half of a dysfunctional couple. I never remarried, though not from bitterness or fear. I simply discovered that I preferred my own company to the exhausting work of building trust with someone new. The betrayal hadn't broken me. It had clarified me, showing me exactly what I would and wouldn't tolerate in my life. Occasionally, I would check social media to see how my former life was progressing. Natalie's posts had dwindled to almost nothing, and when she did share updates, they painted a picture of ongoing struggle. Photos of the child, who looked remarkably like Thomas, were accompanied by increasingly desperate pleas for sympathy and support. "Being a single mom is so hard, but we're blessed to have each other," she would write, seemingly oblivious to the fact that her situation was entirely self-created. The anniversary of the baptism came and went without acknowledgement. I was deep-sea fishing off the Washington coast that day, my phone turned off, my mind focused on the peaceful rhythm of waves against the boat hull. That evening, as I cleaned my catch and prepared dinner in my waterfront apartment, I realized I hadn't thought about Natalie or Thomas in weeks. They had become what they deserved to be, irrelevant to my happiness, powerless to affect my peace. I raised a glass of wine to the sunset, reflecting off Puget Sound, and smiled. The war was over, and I had won more completely than I'd ever imagined possible. Not just victory over my enemies, but victory over the man I used to be, the trusting fool who had believed in promises that were never meant to be kept. The last sound I remembered from that baptism wasn't Natalie's crying or the gasps of shocked guests. It was the quiet clink of my knife against my wine glass as I'd stood to make my final announcement. The sound of a man taking control of his own story, refusing to be the victim in someone else's narrative. In Seattle, surrounded by mountains and water and possibility, I finally understood what true freedom felt like. And every morning when I woke up in my own bed, in my own space, accountable to no one but myself, I felt nothing but gratitude for the betrayal that had set me free. Natalie had given me a gift, though she'd never intended it that way. She'd shown me exactly who she was, and in doing so, she'd revealed exactly who I could become. The miracle wasn't her impossible pregnancy. It was my transformation from victim to victor, from fool to strategist, from broken husband to free man. And unlike her miracle, mine was completely real. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.